America is breaking down into two parties, not the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, two new parties, the American Exceptionalists and the Bipartisan Grievance Party. The American Exceptionalists believe in American exceptionalism, that America is awesome, that we have historically been awesome, and that we will be awesome again if we do the hard things that we must do. The Grievance Party members believe America is not awesome, was never awesome, and will only be awesome if we fundamentally rewrite the American bargain and also retreat from the world for our great sins. That battle between the American Exceptionalists and the Grievance Party, left and right, will define our future as Americans.
So Ben Shapiro just dropped a framework that cuts through all the political noise we're hearing today. He's arguing America's splitting into two camps that cross party lines: exceptionalists versus grievance merchants. This explains why Tucker Carlson and Hassan Piker sound identical on foreign policy. Let's break this down.
They're the people the president calls low IQ these days, and they've become largely indistinguishable from one another. Hassan Piker on the left, say, and Tucker Carlson on the right. They seem to believe that America's constitutional system is a mockery and a sham, that our free market economy is actually just a rigged oligarchy created by nefarious and evil elites at the expense of the poor, that our military is a gigantic terrorist operation, and that the world would somehow be better off if America abandoned the international playing field.
This is the horseshoe theory in real time. Hassan Piker literally streams pro-Hamas propaganda to millions while Carlson pushes Kremlin talking points on primetime. They've found common ground in anti-American sentiment. When extremes meet, they usually bond over hating the center, which is America itself.
They're openly rooting for the United States to fail in its battle to rid the world's leading state sponsor of terrorism, Iran, an apocalyptic death cult that cries death to America, from obtaining nuclear weapons. They want America to lose. They want America to give up power to China and to Russia, and they openly say so.
Iran funds Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Houthis while enriching uranium to weapons-grade levels. They've been chanting death to America since 1979. Yet we have American influencers literally cheering for a regime that hangs gay people and shoots protesters. The moral inversion is staggering.
Well, if you listened to this show, you knew he wasn't. And then over the weekend, it turns out some of us were right and some people were wrong because he didn't cave in. And now he has Iran's feet to the fire. And they have really, really serious problems. So
Trump's maximum pressure campaign worked exactly as predicted. Instead of appeasing Iran like Biden did, he strangled their economy first, then applied military pressure. The Grievance Party said he'd start World War III. Instead, he's methodically dismantling their capability to threaten anyone.
That is not the case. That is not the case. Basically, the Iranians, in order to remain in power, given the fact that they have a completely defunct economy, an economy where the rial, the Iranian rial, is trading at zero. Remember, there were millions of protesters in the streets before the current U.S.-Israeli action against Iran. Basically, Iran had only a couple of levers that it could pull in an attempt to maintain its power. One is it could shoot its protesters in the streets en masse, and they were doing that. The second was they could ramp up conflict via their terror proxies in an attempt to extort the world. They had tried that, and it failed. It began October 7th, 2023.
October 7th was Iran's Hail Mary, a desperate attempt to unite the Muslim world against Israel and break their isolation. Their economy was already collapsing from sanctions. Protesters were in the streets. They gambled everything on Hamas sparking a regional war. It backfired spectacularly.
Quote, the U.S. naval blockade of the Strait of Hormuz would cost Iran approximately $276 million a day in lost exports and disrupt $160 million a day in imports, a combined economic damage of $435 million a day or $13 billion per month. Over 90% of Iran's $110 billion in annual trade transits the Persian Gulf. Oil and gas accounts for 80% of government export earnings and 24% of GDP. Kharg Island alone generates $53 billion a year, or $78 billion a year in energy revenue. The rial has already cratered from 42,000 to 1.5 million per dollar. Banks are currently limiting withdrawals in Iran to $18 to $30 per day. The overall inflation rate is 47.5%. And a blockade eliminating all foreign exchange earnings pushes the rial into terminal hyperinflation. The regime just issued its largest ever banknote, 10 million rials. That sounds like a lot of money, 10 million rials. That is $7.
These numbers show a complete economic collapse. Their largest banknote is worth $7. That's Zimbabwe-level hyperinflation. When people can only withdraw $30 a day from banks, the regime is months away from total collapse. No wonder they're desperately trying to negotiate.
So first of all, the American people, there are a lot of polls out there saying the American people, they don't love the Iran war, that a minority like it or a plurality like it. Okay, here's the reality. Always and forever, Americans don't like wars until we win them. That's all. And even the wars that we do like at the very beginning, if we start to lose them, Americans don't like them anymore. Americans like winning and we don't like losing. It is that simple. And Americans are willing to undergo this for a temporary period of time, as they've said over and over and over. The polls that say, do you like the war right now? No one likes the war right now. No one's like, yes, war. The question is, what do we get in exchange for not doing what we're doing? And the answer is a nuclear Iran with its foot on the throat of global oil supply. Well, that's unacceptable. Every poll shows that a short duration war that achieves our goals is popular with the American people. And a long-term war that doesn't achieve any of our goals is wildly unpopular. Because, duh. Well, Representative Mike Turner of Ohio.
Americans supported World War II after Pearl Harbor, opposed Vietnam after it dragged on without victory. The pattern is clear. We back decisive action with clear objectives. Iran getting nukes threatens global oil supplies and empowers terrorism worldwide. That's worth stopping.
He explained that President Trump is actually a slave to the Israelis, a slave. The president of the United States is a slave, which is psychotic. It's crazy. And the president has multiple times told the Israelis not to do things, like a lot. You'll recall that last year, during the 12-day war, the Iranians fired some missiles at the very end of the 12-day war. Israel had planes in the air to retaliate, and the president called them up and told them no. One of the reasons that Israel ramped down action in Lebanon over the course of the last couple of days is because the president told them that he wanted them to stop so he could pursue negotiations. It was the president's deal to end the war in Gaza. And there are certain provisions of that deal that I am sure members of the Israeli government did not particularly like. The notion that Israel controls America's politics is asinine, truly asinine at every level. But because Tucker Carlson is a conspiracy theorist who believes that America ought to give up its global leading role to China and Russia, because he believes that, he believes that the president of the United States is a slave.
Carlson's puppet master rhetoric is straight from anti-Semitic playbooks. Meanwhile, Trump has repeatedly restrained Israel, stopping retaliation after Iranian missile strikes, pushing for Gaza ceasefires. The facts directly contradict the conspiracy theory, but grievance merchants need their villain narrative.
Casualties is somehow a genocide. But of course, Tucker Carlson is no different from Hassan Piker. They're going to hold hands and walk off into the distance together. This is the grievance party. It is not a shock to see them on the same page with regard to the Iran conflict, because that has become the flashpoint for that divide that we were talking about between America being exceptional and our allies being good, and America being evil and our allies being horrible.
Israel warned civilians before strikes. Hamas uses human shields deliberately. One side follows laws of war. The other commits war crimes as strategy. But the grievance party calls self-defense genocide while ignoring actual genocidal rhetoric from Hamas. The moral compass is completely inverted.
This is why we must withdraw from the world. It's why we must rewrite the American bargain. It's why we must take free markets and grind them under our boot heel in order to make it easier for the youngs. Well, here's the problem. It's not true. It's not true. The Wall Street Journal has a fascinating piece out today talking about the financial status of millennials versus baby boomers. And here's what they find. Older millennials graduated into the 2007 to 2009 recession. Most of the generation was in their 20s and 30s during the COVID-19 pandemic. Boomers weathered an oil crisis, high inflation, and high interest rates as they got their start in the 1970s and 1980s. And what do they find? Well, they find actually that if you take a look at, for example, the 25 to 34 age group for boomers and also for millennials, what you find is that millennials earn more.
Millennials are actually doing better financially than boomers did at the same age, despite graduating into recessions and a pandemic. The data destroys the hopeless generation narrative used to justify retreating from global leadership. America's system still works if you work it.
Now is an op to demoralize Americans, make them feel terrible about the country, make them feel terrible about the state of the world, make them believe that the only future for America is a weak America, an America that takes free markets and pretends that free markets are bad, an America that looks at America's role in the world, keeping the sea lanes open and preventing evil states from going nuclear, and that not only can't we do it, we shouldn't do it. We're an action. We have no moral capacity to do it. It makes us immoral to do it. Again, there are lots of questions about prudence. There are lots of pragmatic questions that we can ask about whether particular interventions or particular measures in an intervention are good or bad, productive or unproductive, or even counterproductive. But the main difference that we are seeing emerge in American politics right now, and this will decide the future of the country, is between the American exceptionalists, the people who believe that America was good, is good, and will be good again, and the people who believe that America was never good, fundamentally gave up the ghost decades ago, if ever it had one, and that the only cure for the United States is, as Barack Obama once suggested, fundamental change. This has been a long battle in coming. The fact that it's infused a little part of the right, a splinter fragment of the right, not a great shock in a time, again, of social media brain rot algorithmic nonsense. But it is the fight. It is the fight. Now,
this is psychological warfare disguised as political commentary. Convince Americans we're the bad guys. Our system is rigged. Our military is evil. Then retreat becomes logical. Obama's fundamental transformation versus making America great again. The choice couldn't be clearer in 2026.